We are now recording. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this conversation to acknowledge our women's history. We're very excited to have all of you joining us today. For those of you who are guests, my name is Dr. Deirdre Young. I use she, her pronouns and serve as Chief Diversity Officer here at the College for Creative Studies. It is my honor to introduce one of my fantastic colleagues, not only in the space of higher ed, but also in the space of diversity, equity, and inclusion, Dr. Linda Logan. She has served Olivet College for more than 20 years, presently as the Vice President and Chief Inclusion Officer. Dr. Logan's responsibilities include education, training, and engaging in research, and assisting in selecting talent and implementing programs that promote inclusion, diversity, equity, access, and opportunity. Dr. Logan holds a doctorate in family and child ecology from Michigan State University, a master's degree in counseling and guidance from Central Michigan University, and a bachelor's degree in sociology from Saginaw Valley State University. I also would like to highlight that Dr. Logan is currently the chair of My ACE for our state. It's our Women's Affinity Group. And as you all know that we have a chapter here at CCS, and I'll be making some announcements later today regarding that organization and how CCS will be partnering in for the months and years to come. Dr. Logan, I will now show the MyACE website in a brief moment and let you begin. And you're on mute. That's all right. It's like the saying of 2021, 2022.
Okay, it's good to see we have 16 people here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Before we share the website, I first want to thank you for asking me to come and being a part of your programming for Women's History Month and the month of the International Women's Day, which was March 8th, and we're past that, but I always like to acknowledge that and also acknowledge that this is Women's History Month. And it's a pleasure to be a part of your programming today. And as I want to frame our time together today. It's going to be very interactive. And the first part is obviously a presentation or some comments about Michigan American Council on Education. But then after that, as we go into the other elements of the program, and it will become more interactive as we talk about the challenges that women face in higher education or challenges that women face in families and children today. That's all going to be very interactive and very much tailored to your experiences as women in higher education and for those who are in families and raising children. So I wanted to preface that as I move forward. And before I get started, also on that website, I want to tell you a little bit about my story. I think it's always important just to have a her story or to talk about our experiences and how we got where we are today. And I started off professionally. I wasn't even in higher education. I was in counseling, and I graduated from Saginaw Valley. And at that time, I graduated from Saginaw Valley. It was a college. It wasn't a university. And so I always want to say Saginaw Valley College when it's really Saginaw Valley University. And I graduated with all the tools to work in the area of counseling. And I worked in counseling for over 16 years. I was a substance abuse therapist and working with people overcoming drugs and alcohol addiction. And while I was doing that work, I realized that the impact on families, the impact of a person's substance abuse was greater than themselves. It also impacted the family. And so I began to explore more about substance abuse in the family. And I decided that in order for me to have a greater impact, I probably needed to go to graduate school, because at that time I was working on the BA level. So I went to graduate school to Central Michigan University to get a degree in counseling. Since I was counseling anyway at the Substance Abuse Center, I decided that that would only help to enrich the work that I was doing and help me do a better job helping families. So I thought I was going to get this degree and go back to working at the substance abuse clinic and specializing in families and creating some opportunities within that organization to include a stronger family component. That was my goal in my head. Well, once I got to Central Michigan University, I was really fortunate enough to receive a scholarship called King Chavez Park Scholarship. And this scholarship helped to pay for my educational experience. It was for women and African Americans and Latinos. And it helped to pay for my education through master's degree and PhD. And when I say help, it really helped because I was a single mom at that time. I was divorced. Right when I went back to get my advanced degrees, I had a 11-year marriage, and I was divorced from that marriage. And I had 2 very small children when I went back to get my advanced degrees. When I went back 100. I went in 100%. And by the time I was moving on to get my PhD, I moved to Michigan State and went to school full time with my children, and they went to school on campus. And then I was able to finish my advanced degree. Interestingly, when I graduated from Michigan State, a lot of us, because I was involved in a very high profile research project, and I was the research leader graduate leader under a very renowned and well-known professor. Everyone thought that I was going to go to a 4-year to a institutional research type of setting. And many of us on that team went to an institutional research setting. I chose, because of my children, to get out of the research component of that. And I applied at a college called Olivet College. And I have been there for over 20 years. And that has been a wonderful experience for me. And I have to tell you that in my interview, one of the people that interviewed me was Dr. Donald Tusky. And he was part of the team that hired me into Olivet College. And not only at that time, he wasn't a president, he was my colleague and bringing me into the social science department. And from that, and once I began to work within the Olivet community, I felt very connected to the community from the beginning. Once I found out that it had a legacy of freeing, of being a safe haven for African Americans, for people who were going for freedom. And so they were part of the Underground Railroad. Much of it was undocumented because during those times, of course, if you had anything to do with the Underground Railroad, you faced fines or possibly death. So but when I saw that on our campus, we have a gravesite of 2 freed slaves, it was pretty moving and powerful to me. And so I felt like Olivet College was a place that was based on social justice, but also had evidence to support it all the way back to slavery time. So I felt like this was a place for me and where I wanted to be. Interestingly, I have had a wonderful experience at Olivet College, starting right out of graduate school, right out of PhD, graduate school. Actually, I hadn't yet finished my PhD. I was working on finishing my PhD when I was just waiting to have my dissertation meeting when I was hired in. And from there, I moved on. I thought I was going to be hired in as a professor, as an assistant professor, but I was hired in as a director for the criminal justice program, which I was thrilled about. And then I advanced from serving as the director for criminal justice into the chair of the social science department, and then to the vice president for student life. And from there, I switched over to the vice president for inclusion and diversity. However, President Donald Tusky at the time hired me in as vice president for student life. And I got to tell you, I will never forget this moment when he came in my office and he sat down, and I'm wondering, what does he want with me right now? And so he came in my office and plopped down and was talking about hiring another vice president for student life because the person that he had hired had lasted a very short time. And I know that I had gone around campus telling everybody that I wanted to move up into the vice presidency. Hear what I say. I was telling people that I wanted to move into the vice presidency, but never really had a plan for it, but just wanting them to know that I was interested in that position. So, and I also wanted to be the first Black vice president at the college. And I had been saying this and sharing this. And prior to Don coming in and speaking with me, President Tuskegee coming in and speaking with me, the college had hired a African-American vice president for student life, and she stayed there a couple months. And so by October, she probably started around August, and by October, she was gone. And then President Tuskegee came in my office, and I thought he was asking me to sit on the search committee for a new vice president for student life. And he actually came in and asked me if I would serve as the interim vice president for student life. Of course, I was really shocked. And so I just sort of paused a moment. It took some time to think about that, but ultimately I said yes. And so I sit here as the vice president, chief inclusion officer for Olivet College. But it all started as the vice president for student life. And I owe all of that to President Donald Tuskegee, and has been a rich, enriching experience, sometimes very difficult, sometimes very rewarding, but I would not trade this experience in for anything. And so I want to take a moment and just acknowledge that and thank your president for advancing me in higher education. And so that's my story, and I wanted to be sure I shared that. As a part of working under President Donald Tuskegee, he also introduced me to Michigan ACE. I didn't know anything about Michigan ACE at all, but Olivet College was a member of Michigan ACE, and he had an institutional representative, and it was in need of another, because each institution through the American Council on Education for Michigan has two institutional representatives. And I know you all know this because you have institutional representatives, and I have been working with them, and it is because of their work and the committees that they have brought together on your campus that we're here talking today. And so from that moment, I joined Michigan ACE, and I have been working with them ever since. And one of my initiatives, and I had given myself a goal, because once I got there, I noticed that everyone doing everything was large institutions, R1, institutional research institutions that were pretty much had founded and had birthed Michigan ACE, and they were leaders in terms of delivering program throughout the state of Michigan and advancing women in higher education. So I thought there has to be a place for small colleges. There has to be a place for that independent college within Michigan ACE. Our voice needs to be heard. So I saw that as a gap within the organization, and I wanted to make a difference and wanted to make an impact. So hear me when I say, I began to tell people, I think there's a voice for small independent colleges. I want to sit on the board. I want to be on panels. I want small independent colleges' voices heard on Michigan ACE through Michigan ACE platform. So as you can see, it happened. I worked as a institutional representative. I was invited to join to co-chair the institutional representative committee. And then from there, I was invited to serve on the board, and I was invited to host a Michigan ACE conference, and I was voted in to serve as the Michigan ACE chair. That's another part of her story that I wanted to share with you, because the very important things that I'm saying to you that I want to resonate with you is, I asked for what I wanted. I had that vision of what I wanted. I had a goal for what I thought was needed. I saw a gap in the system, and I was able, and I created a goal and I moved for it. No one invited me to sit at the table. No one just came up and said, hey, Linda, sit at this table. I had a goal. I decided that there was a gap in the small independent colleges' voices need to be heard. So I sat at that table. So I got an opportunity to sit at that table because I kept putting that in front of all of my conversations. Whenever I was asked to do anything, I brought that forward. When there was question and answer time, I mentioned that. When we were meeting with politicians, because part of what we do at Michigan ACE is to invite our lawmakers to come and share with us, I would always stand up and ask a question about independent colleges. I put it at the forefront. Consequently, I want to share with you that when Olivet College was asked to host a annual conference in 2018, 2019, our president, Dr. Stephen Corey, said, yes, Linda, go ahead and do it. And I said, well, I would need some free time to do this because this is very demanding. He said, okay, just take the time you need and we'll work out your schedule so that you can get this done. So my president was very accommodating. I asked for time because I knew that this was a big responsibility. So I asked for time to be able to do it. And I was afforded some time to work with Michigan ACE. At the end of the day, this small college, a small independent college, raised the most money ever in the history of Michigan ACE annual conferences. And we were able to do that because from small college thinking, because with small college, we have to be very collaborative. So as another nugget is collaboration. We have to be very collaborative. We have to work with others to reach our goals. And I knew this. So I reached out to other institutions within Michigan ACE and was really blessed to have leaders within Michigan ACE agree to work with me to advance the conference. So I had Mid-Michigan College under the come forward and provide 100% technology. I had Michigan State come and join to provide the technology. I saw then another gap. Here's another nugget. I saw another gap within within how we do business with the annual conference as it relates to funding and development and fundraising, which was pretty much non-existent. All the major institutions that hosted the conference paid for everything that the conference didn't pay for. So I said that wasn't going to happen with Olivet College. We don't have the ability to do that. So then I developed, I helped through Michigan ACE, we developed a fundraising component, a sponsorship, which we didn't have before. And so through that sponsorship, we were able to, I'm just going to check in right now. Can you all hear me? Can you see me and hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I saw something come across my phone that said something about disconnect, and I was getting a little nervous. And so it was through that collaboration of working with all the other institutions and having them and to create sponsorships and to go out and to seek sponsorships outside of Michigan ACE that we were able to generate additional revenue. And it was through that additional revenue and it was through those contributions that this very small college, Olivet, was able to set historical records for Michigan ACE. And so I share all of this with you to say that never, ever walk with the spirit or the feeling of scarcity, a feeling of that you don't have enough to get the job done. Erase that from your mind and think about how you can get the job done. What are some things that you can do to get the job done? Because I know as working women and men, working in everyone, regardless of your gender or identity, orientation, or whatever. Working in a very small institution, sometimes you feel like there's just not enough. Sometimes you feel like you just don't have what it takes to get the job done in terms of resources. So I'm encouraging you to strongly rely on collaboration. And I know you're a collaborative team just from the times of my interactions and working with Deirdre and Dana, that you're a very strong collaborative team, and to just figure out ways in which you can get things done, not just at your job, but outside. Like in my experience with Michigan ACE, it was that collaboration and how to get things done. I want to move over and just talk about the programs that we have, that we offer at Michigan ACE. And Michigan ACE is all about advancing women in higher education. That is the primary goal for Michigan ACE. And we work to do that in multiple ways. One is through the institutional representatives. Michigan ACE is an organization that only college presidents can join. The individuals at this point cannot join Michigan ACE. Only college presidents can join. When a college president joins Michigan ACE, there are two institutional representatives are designated for each institution. So each president gets a chance to select two institutional representatives, and then they become a part of the Michigan ACE institutional representative committee. And it is through that committee that representatives are trained on how to have an impact on their campus and the types of programming that they could possibly do on their campus, which this program is a perfect example of that. And then we give out awards each year for a Distinguished Women Award. And I encourage you that if you have someone on your campus that you feel is a distinguished person and you want to acknowledge them, I encourage you to, when you're president, institutional reps, stay in touch with your president. And when that award comes across his or her desk, then you'll be able to bring somebody forward and offer them up as a Distinguished Women's Award. President Corey nominated me for a Distinguished Women's Award, but I couldn't submit the nomination because I was on I was co-chair of the institutional representatives, and I couldn't submit that because of my position there. But I really appreciate the fact that he thought enough about me to send that award in. So I'm encouraging you all to do that. Then we have public policy. Public policy is very important. When we talk about the challenges of women in higher education, public policy is a way in which we can advance women in higher education through public policy. One of the biggest challenges we have right now, and one of the biggest challenges that women have right now, is that of equal pay. Equal pay is closely approaching us. And I can tell you this year, this is the very first year since I've been working with equal pay. And I have been working with the Michigan Pay Equity Coalition for many, many years. And this is the first year that there is no agreement between the National Pay Equity Association and the AAUW in terms of equal pay day. One has it in March, the other has it in April. It's rather confusing, and the very first time it has ever happened. So the Michigan Pay Equity Coalition is encouraging all of us in the months of March through Women's History Month and in April to acknowledge equal pay day. A lot of people will go with the AAUW's date, which is in April. And so I encourage you to acknowledge equal pay day, because this is definitely a way in which the challenges of women can be addressed is through equal pay. We know when women are working, when women are paid well, women do well. When women do well, children do well, and children thrive, and families do well, and families thrive. So equal pay is very important. And So we work with the legislators for every year to advance the pay for women. And we've seen some advances and we have seen some pay increases, but there is still a big gap. And we are likely to see a even larger gap due to COVID and the fact that women were not able to go out and work. Many of them on certain types of employment they actually lost their jobs. And then so we will see some differences, and I think this has a lot to do with the difficulties in coming up with the equal pay day one date this year. But we will see some losses, we anticipate, but also there are some advances. When we talk, and then there is the other component we have is WOCC, is Women of Color Collaborative, and in that collaboration, we want to make sure that we highlight women of color, that we do all we can to advance women of color in higher education. We know that women in general lag behind when we talk about challenges of women in higher education. We know women in general lag behind in terms of promotion and advancement in higher education. But it is not because they don't have the degrees. Women actually have PhDs. Women have advanced degrees and master level in training. And there's far more women gaining in this area than ever before. There was a study done just recently, and it was hot out the presses. And I had the opportunity to go to the American Council on Education conference this past week. And while I was there, a report was released, and the report was released through Women's Power Gap Foundation for Gender Parity Now and AAUW. And it was a study done on 130 elite universities. And though we are sitting here as independent private colleges, this resonates with me, and it may resonate with you as well. When you hear some of the data, we have women, all women, PhD earners is 55%. And this is as of 9/15/21, so this is pretty new. However, when it comes to presidents of institutions, only 25% are presidents. And then when it comes to women of color, when you segregate women of color from this, 19% are PhD earners and only 5% are presidents and institutions. So we do still have a significant gap when it comes to challenges of women in education, because it's not that we're not prepared. It's not that we don't have the credentials, because we do have the credentials in the preparation. But we are facing something that has existed in this country since time, and that is women are often overlooked for leadership positions. So I always have to give President Donald Tusk kudos for bringing me on as a leader and being able to sit on a cabinet, because even in cabinet levels, the rate of women sitting on a cabinet level is lower than for men on a national level. I don't know what it's like at your institution, but at the institution I have served, there's been a balance of women sitting on cabinets under President Tusk and President Corey, but and I would assume it would be pretty similar at the institution that you have. So the question is now, are we talking about breaking the glass ceiling, or are we talking about breaking the concrete ceiling? In this new edition, in this new data, they're suggesting that it's no longer a glass ceiling, that it is a concrete ceiling. And that oftentimes when women are faced with advancement in higher education, there's always this thing about how can we fix them so that they'll be more prepared to do what they need to do. But the reality is you can give women all the training that they need and all the expertise that they need, but that's not going to fix the system. Parity is not defined by helping a woman fix herself. We have the credentials. Parity is found in opening the doors for women, and for women to be considered equally in positions when they come forward. Because we all have the exact same opportunity to apply for a position. Another challenge that women have is that women don't always feel like they are eligible to apply. A man will have a few of those qualifications and say, "Yep, I'm the best man for that job," and he will apply. Where a woman feels like she needs to have 100% of those positions, of those qualifications before she applies. And so I encourage you, when opportunities come before you, and I encourage and you feel like, gee, this is a job for me, but I encourage you to go forward and apply for that position, because chances are you have what it takes in terms of transferable skills and other skill sets to get that job done. Don't let the fact that, because rarely does everyone have 100% of those qualifications. Don't let that stop you from moving forward in terms of reaching your goal for advancement. So as we talk about women of color, there's this other challenge that we have in higher education that I want to, that's great. I think, Deirdre, I just saw you say that it's predominantly women, and that's great. That is a wonderful example of putting women in leadership. So I want to talk about now investing in yourself. Because one of the challenges that women have in higher education is that they don't invest in themselves because they pour so much out to others on the job, at home, with family, husband, children, community, and not necessarily invest in themselves. So it's important that you invest in yourself and in your mental health, that one takes care of themselves in terms of your mental health. Put your self-care is very important. Another challenge is finances. And I'm going to now speak to women of color. At the conference, I had the opportunity to sit in on a luncheon that was given by, hosted by TIAA-CREF. And the TIAA-CREF president, the new TIAA-CREF president, is an African-American woman. She is actually very dynamic. And I was so happy that I had a moment to just be in her presence. Her name is Tashonda Duckett, and she is the first African-American president for TIAA-CREF. She said some interesting things, but the one thing that was most interesting that she said was, women of color, or just African Americans, 80% of them do not have retirement plans. I didn't have to write it down. It resonated with me and it stuck with me. 80% do not have a retirement plan, do not have retirement funds. So we're working in an institution and TIAA-CREF in which we can secure our retirement. And sometimes at a certain age, we think, well, retirement is not that important, but it is going to be important when it's time for you to retire. So I encourage all women to make sure that you are taking care of yourself in the form of securing your retirement plan, and make sure that you are doing your best to, you're going to contribute anyway, because your institution is going to have you contribute. And I assume you're part of TIA, I'm not sure, because there's other retirement organizations, but whatever one that funding organizations, but whatever one you have, I encourage you to match whatever your institution is giving, or more, to, even if you can't match, just put whatever you can in there in your retirement to help prepare you for the day when you decide that you no longer want to work or you can't work. 80% of Black people don't have a retirement fund. I was shocked and disheartened to hear that. So we have a long way to go. And part of that responsibility is that we oftentimes don't earn enough, and we're so concerned about taking care of our households and our families that we just don't pay attention to the retirement component of that. So, or because of those disparities in income, but I am encouraging you, whatever you can, to sort of set that aside. Even if it's $10, $15, $25, please do that. There are wonderful opportunities in terms of professional development in higher education. As I had mentioned before, one of the challenges that we have is advancing women in higher education. So Michigan ACE has a senior level leadership shadow program. In this shadow program, it allows you to and we developed this because we wanted to help women who aspire towards leadership positions. So in this senior leadership shadow program, you can shadow a president, a provost, a dean. If that is your aspiration to grow in that area or to advance yourself in that area, you can apply towards a senior level position, and you will get a mentor from an institution around the state of Michigan within our network and work with them in terms of shadowing them. It's like a fellowship program. You don't have to leave your job. ACE offers these fellowship programs, and they're really very expensive, and you have to leave your job and go work someplace else. But the one we have, you actually stay within your organization, and there are programming times in which you get to work with your mentor and visit your mentor. And it's a really creative and unique experience. And it's an educational one, and it's personalized really just to what your needs are, and help to advance you, help you to reach your goals in higher education. So that's a little bit about Michigan ACE, and I incorporated in there some of the challenges. As I talked about Michigan ACE, I talked also about the challenges, and that was intentional because Michigan ACE is dedicated to helping women navigate through these challenges. So I went through what we do at Michigan ACE to help you sort of understand the value of Michigan ACE and how we can be of help to you. And I encourage you to visit the website and to see areas in which you can take advantage of. And you don't have to take advantage of that just through your institutional representative. Anybody can join any of these any of the programs or committees that we have. They're open to everyone, and you can certainly join them and be a part of them. And I encourage you to come to our annual conference every year, because the information that you gain at those conferences is invaluable. So I want to now take a moment and ask if we have any questions just about what I have shared. Look like Deidre is making an announcement. Go ahead, Deidre.
Since you mentioned it, I am proud to announce that the College for Creative Study will be the host for the annual My ACE Conference, Women Leading with Resilience in Challenging Times. This will happen on June 13th through the 14th at the Suburban Collection Showplace in Novi, Michigan. What we hope to lift up is the landscape has changed. The coronavirus and all of its variations has changed our current landscape within higher education, and it will be changed forever. We've confronted this. It's been stressful, unforeseen circumstances, logistical pivots here and there, and yet we're still managing together. Women, we continue to be faced with challenges, and we've persevered collectively, collaboratively, all the things that Linda identified earlier today in the presentation. The conference sections will focus on the pandemic's influence on higher education and the policies that affect women. We will also be looking at surviving and thriving post-COVID, the path towards becoming a resilient leader, advocating for self and others to achieve your goals, strategies to meet today's challenges, the value of a resilient leader, building resilient, and other topics that will be related to the theme. If you'd like to register now, thank you, Shay, and our operations and facilities and the entire team. I'd like to thank publicly Kate, Megan, Jetstreet, Tanisha, Dana, Glenn in the bookstore, Dr. Don Tusky, and all the other wonderful people who have really worked collaboratively in the midst of snowstorms. The whole school is closed, yet Megan and Dana and Kate Lease are ready for the challenge. there's been so many hiccups. Just the other day, I met with Dr. Logan during the My ACE, and unfortunately, there was a potential shooter at my son's school. Yes, I had to still do an entire meeting for the board, but go pivot at the same time to go be a mom. Talk about resiliency. Thank you to Nadine for talking to me on that day and just sitting with me, because it definitely takes a team to do what we do, both emotionally, psychologically, and all the other ways. We have a registration, not just for those in higher ed as employees, but also we have a student registration cost. For more information, thank you to Greg Frazier for creating this wonderful email address for us, our Women's Network Leadership Conference 2022 at collegeforcreativestudies.edu. Also, thank you to the marketing department for our sponsorship information that you guys can check out. If you know any people that you think may want to serve as a sponsor, or you as an individual like to serve as a sponsor for CCS's event, I encourage you to check it out. And a little bit of background on MyACE, established in 1978 as the first 12 pioneering state networks formed in the nation. Here is a larger picture of it, and a little kind of press release, if you will be coming soon. Also, thank you to Haley Dukes for updating our website. And we'll be having actually a new Register Now theme, and I'll send it over to Dr. Logan immediately after this meeting. So that was a lot of information. I'm going to stop sharing and put that link into the chat. If I forgot any thank yous, please charge it to my mind and not my heart. I love every single person at CCS. So let me just say thank you to everyone. Let's see if there's any questions in the chat. You can feel free to come off mute since this is not a webinar format, so we can hear you live. Also, if any member on our leadership team from CCS or our MyACE leadership team, which is Kate, Lise, and Jetshri, and Tanisha and Dana, have anything to contribute in terms of questions or comments, I ask you to come off mute now. I see one question, Dr. Logan. Are proposals for presentations still being taken? If so, who could they forward that proposal to?
So that's a good question. And this year we decided not to do proposals. Last year we didn't do proposals, and I want to say that Madonna hosted the conference the last 2 years. Well, we didn't have one in 2020, but we had one in 2021, and it was a virtual conference, and over 500, almost 600 people attended that conference. That was history making, and that was a small independent college. And I want to acknowledge the work that they have done, because once Michigan ACE pulled in small independent colleges, we have been setting records ever since, from Olivet being the one to have returned the most funding back to Michigan ACE, to Madonna having the largest membership. And CCCS is making history because they are the first one hosting the conference coming out of the pandemic. And I was so excited that they said yes, that you all said yes. But we're not going to do a call for proposals. But if you have a topic of interest that is related to one of those areas that we're talking about, go ahead and ship it over to Dana and Deidre, because we are asking institutional representatives. We will be asking institutional representatives to bring programming ideas to the table for our breakout sessions. So if you're interested in being a part of that, based upon what we're looking to cover in our conference, we'll be more than willing to look at that, but we're not doing formal call for proposals. We're just looking for people to come forward and to share information in those particular areas.
Thank you, Dr. Logan. Jetshri, I see you're off mute. One of our newest members to our committee. Any comments or questions for the body?
You know, it's mostly towards Dr. Linda Logan. It seems like for you to achieve a lot of things that you have, it was a lot of goal setting and you just going for it, correct?
Yes, you know what? I tell everybody, I operate from a set of B's. And I know when women hear the word B's, they think, oh, really? You're going to use the B word on me? Yes, I do. And the first one I have is to be bold. And in being bold, one must be brave. And so being bold and being brave and putting yourself out there, I highly encourage it. And when you do it, make sure in your head, you know what you're going to say, you know what your goals are, you know what you aspire to be, and you see a way in which you can make a difference in an institution or an organization, because everyone is looking for a value proposition. Everyone is looking for what value you bring to the table. So when you are being bold and brave and putting yourself out there, make sure that you're adding value to whomever you are approaching. Even in interviews, no matter what you're doing, make sure that you can put that value proposition on the table and you're able to bring value. And I always operate from the glitch, from what I see is missing. So I look for that glitch and I go inside and I find out, I research that glitch, and then I bring that to the table, because the glitch is attractive to me. It's going to meet my goals, and that might get my foot in the door. Even though that might not be that overwhelming thing that Linda wants to do, it gets my foot in the door. And once I get my foot in the door, then I can work on those other things.
That's incredible. It's like you're literally asking us to be the change we want to see. Like, literally, yeah.
Exactly. Isn't that bodacious? Another B. Absolutely.
Thank you, Jetri. Kate Lees, I wasn't sure if you went off mute and went back on. Any comments or anyone else from the group?
No, I just really appreciate Dr. Logan being here and offering her insight. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Okay, I see another question in the chat. Oh, and our co-chair of CCS's MyAce, which is Tanisha, says, we thank Dr. Logan for working with us and Deirdre for being the driver of support in collaboration with MyAce. Of course, Tanisha, you know I'm gonna do what we all, need to do to make sure this is excellent. Any other questions or comments? I do have a question while people are thinking about that. Dr. Logan, you talked earlier about how you advocated, how you identified a gap, how you made sure that your goal to address the gap included your voice, your vision for that. But I want to hear, and you talked a little bit about your why briefly. I would like to hear more thoughts around your why. What's your why? Why are you in diversity, equity, and inclusion? Why are you doing this at Olivet? Why do you continue to serve on all of these boards on your off time? Because it is your off time. You're emailing me and I'm emailing back at 10 o'clock at night. Yes, we're working around the clock, but balancing it all. I want to know more about your why, and hopefully that can encourage some people on the team listening today.
So my why is always centered around my values. And I'm glad you asked that, because if I had more time, I wanted to do this in terms of helping women to identify strategies in which they can help advance themselves. And I was running out of time. I knew I wasn't going to have a 100% chance to do this. So I'm glad you asked me this question about my why. And my why is always centered around my values. And so so I encourage you all, everyone, to look at your values to come up with your why. I was raised in a family that valued religion, that valued education, and that valued helping others. So when I got to Olivet, and I sort of talked about my connection to the mission, and that is just doing good and helping others, and how they had helped free slaves. That was for me, that then became my why. I wanted to help other African-American students, all students, to succeed, and particularly I wanted to be there to help African-American students to succeed, because Olivet when I got to Olivet, they were just coming out of shifting their paradigm from being a college that had terrible race relations that made national news to wanting to bring in people of color into higher education to help create an environment where students of color and employees of color wanted to be and wanted to work. So then that became my why. My why has always been to help children and families. As I told you, as a counselor, I left individual counseling to get a degree to help families and children. And so that's always been my why, to advance families and to advance children. And I found a way to do that at Olivet through helping the students to thrive there and to help advance students of color. And that's my why. And that's why I've stayed at Olivet for so long. Olivet has a difficult time hiring people of and them staying. And stability is one of the ways to make a difference. And so I wanted to be a stable presence and a stable force on campus, and to be able to advance women, all women, and to be able to advance people of color. And that's why I stay here, because of my commitment. And that's my values. My values is my why. And I encourage all women to tap into your values, know what your values are and the reason for your being. And oftentimes we don't even think about the reason for our being, but I encourage you just to think about the reason for your being and to think about your why. And your why is really your brand, and to begin to build your brand for yourself. Everyone knows my brand. The people who call me up and ask me to do things, they sort of have an idea of my brand. They know that I'm someone that's just dedicated to advancing women. They know that I'm dedicated to advancing pay for women. They know I'm dedicated to advancing families and children. And so it's your brand. Your values reflect who you are. And if you put it in corporate terms, then that is your brand.
Outstanding. Well, I think we've now coming to the last minutes of this event today. Before I conclude, are there any other outstanding questions from the group? Professor Gil Ashby says, thank you, Dr. Logan. In searching for light, your values are indeed your true north. I also received a comment from our lovely Jetri, who talks about, thank you, Dr. Long, for bringing so much inspiration and showing us what being bold, how it can help. So I thank you for that. For the good of the order, are there any other questions, comments, or concerns for our guest speaker, Dr. Logan, Chair of Michigan ACE, and also Chair of the collaboration with CCS for our upcoming annual conference, Women Leading in Resilient Times. So please check out the link. I put it in the chat. Also put in another link. Val Weiss, our Director of Counseling, also provided some information around how you can get involved and advocate for equal pay. So I encourage you to check out that link that was in our website. Also invited some students from our Women in Animations Club. They reached out to me and said they wanted to get more involved. So hopefully they were able to join us here today. And that is it. I encourage everyone to stay connected, to stay involved. If you have ideas for our CCS annual conference with MyACE, please shoot Dana or I an email, and we will make sure we get back to you. And Dr. Logan, thank you. Thank you for finding time today to share your time, talent, and treasure with the group. We know you also value collaboration, and we value you as a collaborator. And our chair of our faculty executive committee also said thank you, as well as Sandra Wilson, represented the president's office, also said thank you as well. Everyone, team, thank you, Dean Flattery. Thank you, Megan, as well. Until we meet again, may everyone stay safe. And I look forward to engaging with you all at our next Office for Institutional Equity and Inclusion event. It'll be our DEI lecture series featuring Tunde out of the continent of Africa, talking about African women in film. Yes, just you see that face? Love it. We're going to go international. And then immediately following, we'll be doing teaming up with the fashion accessories department or fashion department for a panel discussion featuring a diverse individuals within fashion internationally. So I encourage you to check out our upcoming programming, and everyone, wishing you a productive week. Goodbye.
Thank you.